We all want an easier time at bedtime, am I right? When I speak to clients and parents and friends, they all say the same thing. Bedtime is so stressful. We would all just love our children to float up the stairs, blow us a kiss, read themselves a story and go night-night, and we see them 12 hours later. The reality is, for most people, bedtime can be stressful because it is a transition and a bit of FOMO where we go from playing and enjoying each other's company to having to go to bed. If you find bedtime tough, you are not alone, and this video is definitely for you. What I want you to think about is imagine if you could somehow unlock the magical keys to a resistance-free bedtime. Think what you could do once your kids go to sleep. You could spend time with yourself, you could spend time with your partner, heck, you could even go out with a friend, you could work out, you could work on a hobby, you could do actual work. The possibilities are kind of endless, and it is really life-changing when you can get your kids to go to bed without too much of a struggle at a realistic time that works for them and works for you. Before I share my bedtime tips to help your kids go to bed, perhaps not floating up the stairs, but with so much less fuss and resistance, I wanted to introduce myself. If you are new here, hello, my name is Julie. I hold a doctorate in occupational therapy. I have 3 kids, aged 7, 4, and 1, and I coach moms to go from feeling overwhelmed or frazzled or feeling chaotic in whichever area of their life feels like a struggle right now, to feeling calm, to parenting at ease and with intention, because after all, childhood does not keep. I want you to be able to enjoy your kids, enjoy their childhood. So much of it they can't remember, but you can. So I want you to really come along on this journey with me. I have young kids too, so we're all in this together. And with all that said, let's jump right in to creating your ideal, realistic bedtime routine. All right, number 1 is that your day dictates your night. I recently put out a video about creating an effective routine for your day. You can find that video linked somewhere up here or down below in the description box. And I really described how most of the time, at least for me in my early years, it was all about Operation Bedtime. How can I structure this day so that bedtime comes as soon as possible and with as much ease as possible? I have learned a lot over the past 7.5 years of being a parent, and I've definitely refined the process. And I will say it does get easier. But if you're a parent of young children, especially of a baby, you know how important the day is to dictate how the night is going to go. So if your baby is taking a whole lot of crap naps and it's all over the show, you're probably not going to have a great night. And the same thing kind of happens as our children get older. We want to really establish good foundations and routines, tire them out so that Operation Bedtime is as smooth as possible. Number 2, consider their meals and their liquids. So I think a lot of focus is on dinner time and like trying to get kids to eat. I'm definitely going to create a video all about that because I get asked about toddler feeding and eating and just general mealtime guidelines, tips and tricks. So make sure you are subscribed and let me know if that's something you'd want to know more about. But I do get asked a lot about it, and I want to just lay out the high level principles here. My position on eating is that it takes place over a 24-hour period, or I guess an awake period of 12 hours. You want to focus on your kids getting nutrient-dense, nutritious and delicious food throughout the day in their meals and snacks so that you're not rushing to try and stuff them before bedtime so that they will go to bed, right? You really want them to be having a good breakfast, maybe a mid-morning snack if that's what they need, a nice healthy lunch, and then dinner is just adding to that so that you're not stressed that they haven't eaten enough. The same goes with liquids. Obviously, you want your child drinking throughout the day and you do not want them super thirsty before bedtime. In fact, I used to really be conscious of not letting my children eat very salty foods before bedtime, and occasionally we would go out for dinner or have friends or something, and you know, the typical kids meal on every American restaurant menu is French fries and chicken fingers, which kind of makes my heart roll around because it is packed with sodium to make it taste good. And the problem is that little kids They will drink probably more than they should to compensate for the high sodium intake. And then what happens? They need to pee, or they wake up and pee. So even if it doesn't directly affect your bedtime routine, you're going to get woken up later, they're going to get woken up, it's going to impact your sleep. No one really wants to change wet sheets at 3 in the morning, so really keep that in mind. Additionally, for a child that might be transitioning into nighttime potty training, another video that's going to be coming up because I have lots of thoughts around that. You don't want to be overloading too much liquid before bed. This is why I personally don't allow my kids to drink juice or have milk right before bed, because I think it's just not necessary. It also fills them up with liquid instead of actual food, and it makes them pee. And if you're trying to teach a child to hold their bladder throughout the night, you're not going to be successful if they're drinking a cup of liquid right before they go to bed, even 1 to 2 hours before bed. So really keep that in mind if you're trying to set them up for success. Number 3 is to have a similar routine every day. So I'm not about being militant, I'm about being consistent. When my kids were really small, so we're talking 3 and 1, 4 and 2, that kind of age, 5 and 3, I used to think about what time I wanted them to go to bed. So for me, 7 o'clock was that magic number. And I knew, especially if I was alone, because a lot of the time I was doing bedtime on my own, that if I wanted my kids in bed and preferably asleep by 7 o'clock, that sounded incredible, then I needed to really backtrack how many hours to prepare for bedtime. Because something that I have definitely learned is that when you rush little kids, it never works out. I mean, when you rush us as grown-ups, we usually forget something, we get flustered and overwhelmed. Little kids, that's on overdrive. So if you want a 7 o'clock bedtime, you need to really be doing bath and dinner in the 5s. You know, you need to really be thinking about that. Give yourself extra time if you're on your own, if you have multiple children, if you have a really young baby or a child that needs a lot of assistance. Give yourself the luxury of time. You can always add back extra books in later if you started too early. So what I would do is, and what we still kind of do today with a 7 and an almost 5-year-old, and then we have our little baby, we do bath time around 5:15. They will bath or shower at different, you know, for different amounts of time every night kind of thing, but roughly 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever it is. Then we have dinner, 5:30, 5:45, 6 o'clock, somewhere around there. I give myself a lot of wiggle room. We don't have to be finished at an exact time. But what I'm thinking about is playtime or wind down time. I like to have probably 45 minutes of that time before I have to tell them to go to bed. And I'll get into that in the next point. The other thing that I've noticed that might help you is that when my kids were really small, and especially my son, we would notice that he would eat dinner and then, 45 minutes to an hour later, right when he's supposed to be in his bed, or he's already in bed, in his pajamas, teeth are brushed, lights are off, I'm hungry. How many of you are familiar with that, right? It's like parents' worst nightmare. Like you think that your job is done, you think your shift is over, and all of a sudden, I'm hungry. Anyway, so our solution for that, I don't even know exactly how this happened, but we started anticipating that this was going to happen. I recognized that he has a teeny tiny tummy. For reference, their stomachs, or our stomachs, are about the size of our fist. So imagine a little kid, tiny little tummy, could not really fit too much in there. It can expand, but not too much. You don't want to overfeed them. And so they can't eat that much at a time, which means that you might want to offer them some kind of snack, nothing too crazy, nothing too sugary or anything, nothing with caffeine or something like that. But you want to offer them something nutritious before they go to bed, before they brush their teeth, just to kind of top them up if you're finding that your child is asking for food. This might help mitigate that I'm hungry thing. So even to this day, we still have the I'm hungry kind of snack, which is in our family called a mixed up treat. And from what I can remember, I think what was happening is originally we started off offering him things like bananas or clementines or yogurt, like crackers, nothing super exciting, because the point is not to make this a treat. We don't really want to be rewarding this behavior, but I also don't want him to actually be hungry and then not go to sleep and all of, the usual stuff. So he started asking for something savory, or he would say crunchy, which for him it was like a cracker or something like that, savory and sweet. So it could be like dried fruit or a little piece of chocolate or something small. And then as he got older and more savvy, and he went to school, and every holiday under the sun has all this candy associated with it, you know, we started having a lot more treats in our house than I had when he was a baby. And so I had to get creative, because I don't want to restrict my children from eating. I don't want them to feel that there's bad food and good food. I think there is better food for you, and food that will make you grow big and strong, and food that is really just for your taste buds to have a little party, you know. It doesn't really have nutritious value, but it has cultural, social value. And so I didn't want to demonize any type of food. So that is when I allow him to have some kind of candy, treat, whatever you want to call it. Because in my mind, he's already eaten a, you know, solid meal, which means his stomach is nice and coated with whatever food he's eaten, which means whatever sweet, blood sugar inducing piece of candy or chocolate or ice cream or whatever he's going to eat is really going to be dampened down in terms of his blood glucose. And I know we're getting all technical here, but parents talk a lot about how their kids get hyped up on sugar. And one of the reasons that happens is if you give kids a very high sugared or glucose or sweetened beverage or food on an empty stomach or nearly empty stomach, it's kind of like a shock to the system, like you're having coffee on an empty stomach and you get that like caffeine buzz. And the same thing kind of happens with sugar. It spikes our blood glucose and gives us a lot of energy. And then you have the dip and you have the crankiness and the whole thing, right? So I feel more comfortable with my kids having a little piece of chocolate or some kind of candy or whatever it is, because let's be honest, I live in America and we kind of run on candy here, right? There's Halloween, there's Valentine's Day, there's 4th of July candy, there'll be Christmas candy, there's Mother's Day candy. I mean, there's every kind of occasion, there'll be an excuse, there's birthday parties, all this kind of stuff. And as I said, I don't want to deprive my children. I'm trying to bring them up in a way where they have a, you know, healthy relationship with treats and sweets and can kind of, you know, understand how addictive these things can be, slash have some element of moderation and self-control, but also not deprivation. Because if I deprive them, I know of people, especially when I was growing up, that were deprived of sweet things and would go and eat them behind their parents' back. And I don't think that's great either. So I'm just trying to figure it all out. And this is something that I've really found. I don't feel like it gives them this extra boost. I don't feel like it inhibits their ability to go to bed. I mean, they're so much more self-controlled than I am. They'll have one little block of something. It's as if they know that their bodies can only have child-sized pieces of candy, right? But they're full already. They've already had dinner. So they're not starving and like gorging on chocolate because they're actually hungry. So anyway, that's where the mixed up treat thing came from. He would want like a little cracker and then like a little gummy thing or something. And so now we even build it into our routine. So we have dinner early, then maybe 45 minutes to an hour later, oh, did you have your mixed up treat? Then they'll have a little treat, and then they will go and brush their teeth and get ready for bed. And I have really noticed when I don't pay enough attention to how much protein and fat they're getting in their meal, that's when my daughter especially, who doesn't always want to eat like a meat or things like that, which is her choice, but I notice that she'll ask me for more food later on, like when she's lying in bed. And so it's a mental note to encourage her to eat when we're having a meal time, and also not to rush. Right, so I spoke about this before, but number 4 is playtime wind down time. I build this into our bedtime routine because what I have noticed with my own kids, and I feel like this is the same with a lot of my clients and my friends, is that children, like grown-ups, need connection time. And where you get stuck when kids don't want to go to bed, they're either not tired enough, which could be the case, or they haven't like slowed down enough to really register that they're tired, or number 2, they are craving their buckets to be full. Let's just say. So they're craving connection, which could be playing, maybe playing with their siblings. Like my kids now go to separate schools and they don't see each other nearly as much as they used to, you know, during the week, and they love to play together. They're at a great age to play together. So they want that time. They also might want time with either my husband or I. And it's important that you build in that time where you create connection. Now, before you get all stressed out, especially if you have multiple kids and you're like, how am I going to spend that quality time at 6 o'clock at night? It's like a hectic time, or you have a baby that needs to go to bed, all this kind of stuff. I hear you. I'm in that situation. I have a 17-month-old. She needs to go to bed before they do, and that often means that I miss bedtime with my older children, or I have to go and say goodnight to them later, and then I risk starting the whole thing all over again. So this is what I recommend. Just like with food, how we spoke about, you don't try and stuff them up, just during dinner. The same goes with connection. Find moments throughout the day, even throughout the week, carve out time, especially if you have more than one child, to really spend time and see your child, value them and spend time with them, because that will build up their connection so that they're happier and feel more content and satisfied to go to bed at night. Remind your children why they need to sleep, why they need a consistent bedtime. Be honest with them. Talk about the importance of routine. As they get older, talk about circadian rhythms. You'll be amazed at what children can really understand and kind of interpret for themselves. Talk to them about this when they're not having a tantrum, when they're not super tired. Talk to them about this around the dinner table. Talk to them about the importance of growing big and strong, and the way that you grow big and strong is through sleeping, resting, eating, getting outside, exercise. The more you talk about this, the more you kind of condition them positively and help them really understand that these are the building blocks for a successful, healthy life, consistent sleep. Talk to them about how you as a 7-year-old only need 11 hours of sleep. What your baby sister, she needs 12 or 13 or 14 hours of sleep. Continue to reinforce this message so that you really have an easier time, so that when you're getting ready for bed and they're like, I don't want to, because they want to play more, they want to stay up late. I mean, it's totally human nature. I definitely stay up too late often because I have FOMO, It's normal for them to want to stay up late. Talk to them about the importance of sleep to just help confirm why you are doing this. Number 6, you can always go back and add in another book or add in more playtime. So start earlier rather than later. You can always start the bath at 4:30. Who says you can't, bath your kids at 4 o'clock, 4:30 if that's when you have a lull and that feels a good time for you? Have dinner early. Give them a little bit of a top-up snack before bed. They'll probably love it if you have more time. If you've now whisked through the bedtime routine and you feel like you're just twiddling your thumbs. I doubt that would be the case. Let them play a little bit longer. Read an extra book. No problem. But if you're rushing, you can never get that time back. If you're starting too late consistently, it's really hard to get everybody in line with things and then to be ready by a certain time. I firmly believe that children should go to bed a little bit earlier than we typically, allow them to. And part of that is like school routines and sports and activities that end late. And I think it's a problem unless school is going to start later the next day, which in my experience, it doesn't. Perhaps a topic for another video. So I want to know from you, what is a crucial part of your bedtime routine and where do you find it tricky? Let me know in the comments down below, what is your ideal bedtime for your kids? I'd be curious. And also, in case you didn't know, I have a weekly podcast and newsletter that I put out. It gets released every Monday. Make sure that you go and check out those links down below. I'm also very active on Instagram, so come and say hi, send me a DM. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with anyone who might find it useful. I would be so grateful. And until next time, moms, remember, you've got this.